Hey everybody, welcome to the thelinuxcast. I'm your host, Matt.
And I'm Tyler.
Welcome to the thelinuxcast. This is 2 weeks in a row. We haven't done one 2 weeks in a row in a bit. It's weird. We should have taken the week off. I'm just saying. This shouldn't happen. 2 weeks in a row is unusual, but we're working on stringing some together, and we actually are following through with that, which is good. And you guys should all be very impressed. I mean, there are no other podcasts that do two things in a row. That's just not...
That's insane. Like, how?
It's just never going to happen. All right. Anyways, this is Linuxcast. We talk about Linuxy things, and that's what we plan on doing today. But first, before we jump into our week in FOSS and move into the main topic, I have a couple housekeeping things to talk about. First, all of you, and I mean all of you, well over 1,500 people who listened to the podcast last week in the audio version, you're all saints. I mean, seriously, that was the most visual related podcast we've ever done, and you listened to the audio version. Thank you. I don't know how many of you listened to the end. I don't have those tight kind of statistics, but there was over 1,500 people who actually listened to it in audio form. It was very weird.
Oh, wow.
So thank you for that. Second, kind of relatedly, but if you do listen to this in the audio form, and you haven't already, and you're listening to it on a platform that accepts reviews, specifically I'm talking about Apple Podcasts, but a few of them also accept reviews and ratings, leave us a review, leave us a rating on your podcast platform of choice if you can. We'd really appreciate it. It'd really help the podcast. We have had several people on Apple Podcasts give us ratings and reviews, and we'd appreciate many, many more because it helps us beat all the other Linux podcasts, which are obviously far inferior than this current podcast, which is obviously the best one on the internet, anywhere, ever.
Preach, brother. Preach.
Seriously. Also,
yes.
I need my phone to stop buzzing. Like, seriously, it needs to stop. I made a post on Reddit in one of the book subreddits, and like everybody just comment after comment. It's just stupid as shit. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. So this is the LinuxCast. We're going to talk about Ubuntu today.
Ubuntu.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But before we do, we're going to jump into our week in FOSS as always. So Tyler, my friend, my bud, what have you been up to? You've been much more successful by this way. You've shown me some of that stuff earlier. I'm very jealous. But anyways, what have you been up to this week?
Well, so just because Discord's going to do its thing, I had a great week. So I'll go ahead and switch over.
Won't do it for me.
Because I can show my desktop. But, whoops. So here, this week I have been setting up my Proxmox server. Got all of my Docker VMs, which, since we're speaking about Ubuntu, this dashboard here is the Homar dashboard. Believe I'll talk about it later on as my thingy too. I'll give out the link and stuff for it, but this is probably I looked at quite a few dashboards, and this was definitely my favorite by a long shot. Very customizable. I've got notes on like what I need to do for it. I've got links up here to like my Jellyfin server, Proxmox, Nginx. Over here, I've got the download speed, and so this shows my qubit torrent. I've got an Arch Linux ISO. Obviously, you need that downloading, of course. So it gives me all that information. It's just very cool, very, very cool. Got it all working, and it's been really nice. I got the Nextcloud set up as well. It's been nice. I got my home server and like all my media set up. Very good.
I'm very jealous of you. You're going to help me set that up. I'm forcing you.
I absolutely will. I'd be more than happy to, and I also will be doing a video on my home lab.
Mine will be yeah.
Okay.
Mine will be different because I don't have Proxmox, but hopefully it'll be as easy. Sorry, I kind of cut you off there because I'm really excited because I want Nextcloud, damn it, but I can't get it because I'm too stupid.
Well, you're not, because most likely what you're doing, at least if you're doing it the same way I was, like the internal port is going to be different than the external port. And if you're doing anything with like reverse proxying and stuff, like you probably need to change out your external port. You probably just have it wrong in your Docker Compose, because I believe I copied mine from the documentation and it was wrong and I had to switch it. But I can't remember. Maybe I got it from somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't know what any of that means. So I was trying to do it 100% in the GUI, because this is the one thing that I didn't not want to deal with a config file for. So I wanted to do it all through Portainer, which you can supposedly do, but I messed it up.
Yeah.
All of you in the chat who are freaking out because you just saw a Mac, like you've never seen one before. Yes, Tyler was on Mac. If you listen to last week's podcast, he's on a Macintosh. He's no longer one of us, apparently. I don't know.
Well, I'll do that too, just in case you didn't see that last podcast. Yes, I am on a Mac. I got a MacBook, and I took the main desktop machine, that server running all of those Docker containers, and like that's running Proxmox. It's got my ZanyOS, like Nix environment for like developing and working out of there. It's also, I am slowly getting it into a proper like remote in gaming machine as well. So all of my Steam games can be played through that machine on the Mac, on my mom's laptop, on anything in the house. So yeah, I took Linux and made it like the centralized unit of the house, and then I've got my Mac to tie in with my iPhone. I already have an iPad Pro, all that stuff. So I've got a very like mobile workstation, because I can take my DSLR, my lighting, everything, and break it down, and it all goes in one backpack, and I can just walk out. So it's pretty nice. Like I can set up and do the podcast literally anywhere and not even have to worry about it. That's kind of what I wanted.
This is going to be a thing. In other words, every time you share your screen, everybody's like, is that a Mac? Oh my God. Boo. Boo.
I finally get how the Linux Foundation people must feel. I actually get it.
That's funny. Okay, so I have been messing around with the home server as well. I've not made it nearly as far as Tyler. I've been learning about Docker, because I have no experience with Docker whatsoever. None. Like zero. I don't know how to start one, how to stop one, how to create one, how to download one. None of those things. I don't know. Tyler says Docker Compose. I still don't know what that means. Don't know what a click. I get it's like a config file now. I think it's like a config file.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Sure. Had no clue. So I went in and looked for some tutorials, and this is a little bit of a rant, because just why the hell not? There are a lot of tutorials on how to set up, Portainer, and how to get to Nextcloud, and how to do Docker stuff. And like, first off, it's kind of like installing Gentoo. Everyone has their own way of doing it. And unfortunately, some of these are really old and they don't work exactly the same. So the UIs are different. So if you find one that's a little bit more modern and you find that and it still doesn't work, the tutorials just have not been very good for me. And someone's like, oh, go read the documentation. The documentation assumes you know at least a little, and unfortunately I know nothing. So I freely admit that I know nothing. So I've had some problems, but I did finally, after the podcast last week, get Plex up and running. So I was having permissions issues, and my solution ended up being 777 everything. that ended up being the solution. Now, I was able to go back in and re-put the permissions on the stuff that didn't need to be 777 on everything. So like the other so I have like my media folder and then a whole bunch of other directories inside of the main directory. All the ones that don't have to be in Plex, I went in and put the regular permissions back on. But the main big directory that contained everything had to be 777, and then everything all the way down into the media directory had to be 777. Why? I don't know. It shouldn't need to be 777. 774 should have been perfectly fine. And the Plex, the Plex user and the Plex group, all that stuff was perfectly set and it still wasn't working. But 777, it works. But here's something that I have to say about that. If you're going to move to having your own, now this is going to get me demonetized, I know that it is, but all of my music has been collected over the course of the last 20 plus odd years in ways that are eclectic. Let's just put it that way. A lot of them are CD rips, perfectly legal. A lot of them let's just say in college, LimeWire was like the shit. I mean, this was like,
Yeah.
I mean, you were like 7 years old when LimeWire was around, Tyler.
Dude, trust me, and even then I was using LimeWire.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
was using LimeWire.
Right. So a lot of my stuff comes from there too. And the thing is, when you get music that way, the metadata is fucking garbage.
Garbage.
I mean, it's just so bad. And my lazy ass has never changed a lot of it. Like, a lot of it still says LimeWire in the fucking title. It's so bad. So, I have approximately 4 terabytes of media, between movies, TV shows, and music.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying 4 terabytes for music. I was like,
No,
my lord, man.
It's like 500 gigabytes of music. It's quite a lot, but
Okay, I mean, that's a lot, but it's not nearly as unreasonable as I thought at first.
I have a lot because I like a lot of music, but the metadata on literally everything is fucking garbage. Like, it's so bad. And I've spent years in Spotify now, right? I've been paying for Spotify since like 2015 or something like that. All of my playlists are in Spotify. Now, I do have some playlists in like Apple Music because I've switched back and forth sometimes, but it's pretty easy with a couple applications to switch back and forth between the streaming services. But actually getting your playlists out of Spotify and into Plex, especially when the metadata is not right, is pretty fucking hard. So I'm still subscribing to Spotify until I get all of my metadata, and that's going to be a project for the fucking ages. It's like going to be building the pyramids. It's going to be so hard and tedious, and like, I know that there are programs out there that make it a little easier, but it's not. A lot of them are still very tedious to do, and they're like, what I want, and I know that they actually had this back in the day, like when iTunes was the big thing. There was something they called like auto meta or something like that, and it was like a plugin for iTunes that sat on the side, and it would go through and actually listen to every song and do the metadata. I don't know if they still have that anymore, but I wish it was still a thing.
People in chat have actually said Music Brains Picard, and I have heard of that, and I think I use that to fix up my music library. So you might want to give that a shot. Now, I don't know with that large of a library if it may miss some things, but for the most part, it should be able to fix up your metadata.
I've heard of it. We'll see how it works. I've never tried it before. I know it's going to be because as bad as the music is, the movies are worse. The movies are worse because on those, when I ripped most of my DVDs, I didn't have very good internet at the time. And a lot of times I wasn't even connected to the internet because it happened when I was at college. And you don't want to mess around with any of that stuff on a network that you don't really control. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That was before I knew anything about VPNs. That was 2004. So it was quite a long time ago. So the metadata on the movies is way worse, and that's going to be an entire other project. And same with, actually, to be honest with you, same with the TV shows. It's all a mess.
The most painful part for me was for me, the movie collection is the one that, like, it's all legally obtained, legally ripped. And that one I have to go through because I didn't really give a shit about like the proper like name. Like, they were not formatted wildly with the names, but it wasn't like just the name and like the year or something simple like that. And for me, when I set up my Jellyfin server, I wanted to make sure it pulled all the metadata correctly. So I had to go through and like rename a whole bunch of those. And the one thing I can say that I have full confidence in is, if you think any file manager on Linux is terrible, go to your local Apple store and try to rename 40 files. And then don't use the same like naming scheme. Like, you're going to have to like do something individual for. Have fun.
So what you're saying is
the worst.
Finder is bad, is what you're saying.
Yes, it is objectively terrible. Anyone at Apple who designed Finder should be prosecuted for their crimes It's so bad. It's so bad. I hate it.
Okay, so there was a I think it's called Pathfinder. It's like an alternative version for alternative like file manager for Mac. You should check that out. I think it's still around and still actually being like maintained. I'm not sure. I haven't used a Mac since like 2012 or something like that. So I don't know. I just know that there are alternatives to Finder. So if you want to check those out, you can.
Oh, you're a saint.
I know.
Thank you.
Like I know. Yeah, that's the one I'm looking. Look. It's like it's very very powerful. It's like Crusader for Mac. That's basically what it is. But so I can actually show people this. This is what it looks like.
It's paid software, but I'm telling you, if it makes the file browsing on Mac usable, I'll pay him $300 for a lifetime license. I don't give a crap.
Yeah, I'm sure I actually probably have a lifetime license, but I don't have a computer to run it on. And probably have since lost the email because I've switched email since then. That's been a long time ago. Anyways, so yeah, that's our week in open source. I'm still next. You guys should just be prepared for home server stuff for quite a while, probably from both of us, because that's kind of what we're into at the moment is messing around with home server stuff. So, anyways, on to the main topic. The main topic is Ubuntu still the default distro? Now, someone says, "Oh, it never was." Like, okay. Yes, it was. Okay. Anyone who paid any attention to Linux at all from like 2008 forward, you know exactly what distro is the default distro. Like we know that, you know, like Fedora and Red Hat and SUSE and Debian, they were all around long before Ubuntu was, or at least most of them. But none of them had the community behind them for a while until Ubuntu came around. Like, and when I'm talking about the community, I'm talking about like everyday users, like non-actual 1990s style nerds. So, and that's not, you know, trying to be offensive. like if you were on the 90s, you guys are great. But Ubuntu really did make Linux feasible for a lot of people when it wasn't beforehand. So the question that I have to answer to ask today is Ubuntu still as important today as it was, say, 5 years ago? Also, do you think that the future of Ubuntu is as it was, to kind of leading the charge in terms of being the distro? So Tyler, what do you think about Ubuntu these days?
Well, I mean, I think it's definitely like I chose it for the Proxmox server, like maybe running Proxmox, but like all of my home network, like all those, that dashboard, all of the stuff I'm running is all inside of an Ubuntu VM. And I chose it mainly because I wanted the canonical, like, set up for me, and Ubuntu, especially on the server, is very nice. The problem is Ubuntu may have made Linux very very usable, but I don't think there's much of a value add with a lot of their new initiatives like snaps. I could have easily installed Docker as a snap and everything. I did not. I chose to go and use the Docker, like Docker and Docker Compose like setup guide from Docker, which does not use snaps. I would much rather not. I feel like a snap is probably going to introduce some type of weird problem that I've got to go and fix down the line. I think Ubuntu is doing just fine. I think they're still a great distribution. I just don't think there's much of a buzz around the stuff they're doing as there used to be. Snap is a reason to avoid. Yeah, like I couldn't agree more with that comment. Yeah, absolutely.
So just to show you how interested in getting Nextcloud up and running I installed Snap on OpenSUSE, and tried to use the Nextcloud Snap. It still didn't work, but I actually have snaps on the home lab behind me, or the home server behind me. Yeah, so for me, I was never an Ubuntu guy. So my first distro that I ever tried was SUSE back in 2003. And then I went away from Linux for quite a while. But when I first came back, I did my first distro when I first actually switched like full time to Linux was Ubuntu Budgie. Now, granted, I didn't stick around for very long because I decided I wanted to try all the distros, and I did try all the distros, and then I tried them again, and then I tried them again, and then I tried them all again, over and over and over again. But when I finally did settle on a distro, I didn't settle on Ubuntu. I settled on an Arch-based distro. I settled on Arco for the longest time, and then I went to Fedora and eventually OpenSUSE. Ubuntu for me has always been boring. And I know when I say boring, people think I mean bad, but I urge you to look at the spelling of the words. Boring and bad, they're not the same word. Debian is boring. But it's, for whatever reason, I find Debian less boring than Ubuntu. And I think that the reason why I think that is just because, I don't know actually why I think that. It just feels that way for me, that Debian is less boring than Ubuntu. Ubuntu has, I've also never really cared for the design of Ubuntu, so that's something that plays along with it. But I think mostly it just feels like it just doesn't fit in with the way that I want to use a Linux distro. And I think that I got too attached too early on to a rolling release distro. Like, the reason why I think, actually that's a good thing to say, is that the reason why Debian doesn't seem as boring is because it has a testing repository that you can subscribe to that basically makes it a rolling release, or something like one, right? And that is, now I'm sure you probably can do something similar on Ubuntu. I don't actually know, but that's the reason why I prefer Debian over Ubuntu in some ways. But also, I liked Unity a lot, but I don't care for the design of it. And then when they went to GNOME, that was like a double turnoff because GNOME was so astonishingly slow when they first switched over to GNOME. And they've made it faster. Like, the reason why GNOME is faster today is because of Ubuntu. The GNOME guys didn't care that it was slow. Like, they didn't care. It was slow forever. It was slow forever. Then Ubuntu came along and said, we're using GNOME. This needs to get fucking faster. They made it fast, pushed it upstream. And so it's faster these days, but it's still GNOME, and I don't like GNOME. Now, somebody's saying, oh, like, it has flavors. Like, that's true. And I used KDE, or the Kubuntu one, for a while. It was fine. But if you're going to use KDE, for me, I always want to use KDE on something that's rolling because I want the most latest stuff from KDE. That's kind of the point of KDE, at least for me it is. So, I don't know. Ubuntu just has never been for me. Now, do you think that Ubuntu, because there's a lot of distros that are based on Ubuntu, right? Again, Linux Mint, Elementary OS, if it's still a thing. Do you think that the way that they have kind of just not taken the desktop seriously over the last few years how do you think that has affected the way we see Ubuntu? Because they definitely not have managed it well, I don't think. What do you think?
Well, I mean, they're definitely not winning brownie points with desktop users. Like, I mean, if you don't have a home server, there has not been an interest in mainline Ubuntu in forever. Like, snaps got you interested when they first came out. Like, oh, I'm doing something interesting and new. But snaps haven't been good. So that interest died off pretty quick. And I don't think people have a very big incentive to check out canonical stuff on the desktop. So I think that definitely provides a lot of room for other distros to fill that void, like Elementary OS and the others, to do something interesting and different with the desktop where they actually focus on it.
Well, I think part of it is that they themselves have no incentive to make the desktop good or better or different or change or any of that stuff, right? Because they don't make any money off of the desktop. All their money comes from being a server distro, similar to Red Hat or even SUSE, right? They make the vast majority of their money from selling to enterprises. But the difference between Canonical and Red Hat and SUSE is that specifically Red Hat, at least, they do have an interest, at least it seems, to making the desktop Linux move forward into different places. Like, they created Wayland and they created Pipewire, and they created all these services, right, and to make the desktop itself actually function. And Canonical doesn't seem to be as invested in that area, and I think that's kind of what's changed. Like, it used to be, I mean, yes, Red Hat and Fedora have always been pushing Linux forward. That's basically kind of the thing, right? I mean, since Red Hat's early days. But Canonical used to also be that. They used to have ideas, right? They had, like, we had, when we decided we're going to replace Xorg, there was 2 different competing standards. They had Mir and Wayland. Like, Mir is still around, but nobody uses it. But that was the thing. It was going to be kind of like the HD DVD versus Blu-ray thing. It was going to be Wayland versus Mir, right? But it never happened. Wayland just won. And I think that Canonical has kind of like the Google syndrome, or or at least they did when they had ideas. They would have ideas and they would do it for a little while and, like, oh no, this isn't working, and then stop it, like, or not putting effort into it.
They were kind of timid with it.
Yeah, like the Ubuntu phone, the convergence thing that they had for a while, like that idea, like that wasn't around for very long, right? Eventually, they got rid of Unity altogether, and they just didn't stick with it. And I think that it's really hard for me to get it. And this goes back to me talking about them being boring. Is like it feels like they don't have ideas, like any ideas. Like, it's just staying the same. Like, here's a good example. They had been using the Ubiquiti installer for a long time. It looked a certain way and worked a certain way for a long time. And then they announced, we're going to do a new installer. It's going to be based on Flutter, which is, a toolkit that they helped produce with Google. It took them a long time. Like, it took them almost 2 years to do this installer. And then when you finally used it, it looked and acted exactly the same as the old installer. Like, what do you guys spend the last 2 years doing? It doesn't feel like you did. Maybe the underlying technology is better and easier for them. That's fine. But it just feels like, it didn't they didn't follow through with the innovation that I would have expected for 2 years worth of effort. And there's been a lot of situations like that. I don't know.
I think, I don't know. I think we're going to end up having a hard time with keeping up with Ubuntu eventually. I have a feeling Canonical is going to start doing a lot more interesting new things. With I mean, here's one. What if, like, Ubuntu started for the desktop, like, started defaulting to and allowing you to install, like, much more different file systems? Because I know they've added XFS. Do they have ButterFS support now?
No, not out of the box. You can use it, but it's similar to how you would use it on Debian. You have to do things quite manually. Yeah.
I think them adding, like, file system support like that, and even making, like, something like ButterFS as the default with Ubuntu would be pretty nice. I also would love to see them get rid of the Snap, like, have they done that where they've gotten rid of the Snap home folder?
Yes.
They did? Thank God.
No, okay, all right.
Thank God.
I think they have, because, like I said, I installed Snap on the home lab behind me, and it's a hidden folder now. Like, it's a hidden folder. I looked at it, I was like, holy shit. I actually have a picture of it because I didn't believe it. Like, did they actually fix this after 10 years? Like, apparently they did. Or at least on OpenSUSE they did. I don't know if on other distros they did, but in OpenSUSE it's fixed. It was amazing. Like, it was a revelation. Loopback devices, still there.
Of course.
Those aren't going anywhere. But apparently they fixed the home. Yeah.
as long as they get a lot of that stuff ironed out, where they're not like the loopback devices is horrid and ugly. Like, get that out of there. Just hide it. I swear on God, it cannot be that hard. Like, just hide the loopback devices. We get it. They're there. Sure. Give us a way to check up on them. Make sure they're there, like doing what they need to, but clean it up. It's ugly. Make sure that snap folder should never be an obvious folder in your files. There's no excuse.
I would like to interview the person who made that decision.
Yes.
I would like to sit down and say, hey, what the fuck were you thinking?
Like, why? Like, why would you put that? What?
Like, this makes no sense whatsoever.
You're not a game launcher. Like you're not installing yourself on Windows. Like, there's no reason to create a folder in I mean, you might as well have just tried to throw it in my documents and act like it was fine there.
I think, and I may be wrong about this, maybe this is just my headcanon for it, but I think what they were aiming for is, like, you know on Mac how you have an applications folder, and that's where you drag all of your applications folders into, and that's you kind of installs them that way. I think that's what they were kind of aiming for, is that all of your applications lived in this folder, and you'd want to see it, because on Mac, you want to see all of your applications. You don't want to hide all of your applications, in a hidden directory or in the root file system. You want to be able to actually see them. I know. I
so stupid.
100% agree, because you can't actually do anything with those files. It's like you can't go in to the snap folder and start up your files. And even if you could, why the fuck would you want to? That's the stupidest thing. We have...
Okay. The only reason that Mac's applications folder thing is cool is because that's how you install stuff. You open up a DMG, which is, I mean, it might as well be just a zip. It might as well. You open it up, it's normally got a pretty interface. You drag a binary into the applications folder, done. That's not how Snap is designed to work at all. So that whole, the dude can't use that. That's not a valid excuse.
Alexi says that they did it because there was no portals back then, but that's not the... I don't think that's the reason, because if that was the reason, there's still nothing stopping them from putting a period in front of the folder name. That's all they had to do is put a period in front of the folder name.
Let's be honest. There's absolutely no excuse or reasoning that someone's going to tell us we're going to be like, makes sense.
The thing is there's absolutely no reason why snaps can't be good, right? They've proven that they can actually be fairly good. Let's just be honest, that nobody cares that loopback devices are there, because who spends all their time in LSBLK? It bothers me and it bothers you, but the vast majority of people don't care. Even the home directory snap folder didn't seem to bother that many people, because it took them 10 years to fix it. Well, the problem with snaps has always been that they were slow. And the thing is that they fixed it. They absolutely did fix it. If you use some snaps, they're just as fast as Flatpaks. The problem is that they did not mandate that all snaps in the store use the new compression that fixed the problem. So you can download one app, it launches lickety split. You would download another app, both of them coming from the same store, and because it hasn't been updated in a while, and it doesn't use the new compression that they chose, it's slower than shit. So you can have this same experience and have two different situations that you find yourself in, and it's really fucking annoying. Flatpaks have degraded in terms of speed. I don't know if anybody else has noticed. I've noticed it, that Flatpaks have gotten slower over the course of the last year. I don't know why. Maybe it's just on my system. I don't know. It's possible. I've talked about this in a video. But Flatpaks have gotten slower. Snaps have, in a lot of situations, gotten faster. I think that the other thing that has happened with snaps is that Flatpaks have kind of garnered more corporate support, it feels like. They have the official support from OBS. They have the official support now from Spotify. Several other big brands have officially validated the Flatpaks. That same hasn't happened a lot on the Snap Store. Also, for whatever reason, the Snap Store keeps having these incidents where, crypto wallets, we're going to steal all of your money, or they have malware or whatever. Canonical, you have a lot of money, maybe just hire one dude. Just, you can hire him off the street. He doesn't have to have any freaking knowledge whatsoever. All he has to do is know how to turn the computer on. Maybe you can hire him to go through some of this stuff and see if it's, good or bad. And just, you can also have him go through and say, hey, the publisher of this is actually the developer of the apps, and give him a sticker. And if they're not, they don't get the sticker. But instead, they have this really weird verified system where some people get the verified badge, even though the package themselves, they're not actually the developer of the package. And it's really, it makes the verified badge very similar to Twitter, where everybody gets one. It's really, It's really stupid.
Spend the $8. You're verified.
Alexi's pissing me off. He says it's an OpenSUSE issue. It very well may be.
It definitely is.
It may very 100%. Well be an OpenSUSE issue. I don't know. It's also possible it's just my install, because my install is pretty old at this point. So maybe it's like everything Linux. The longer you use it, the slower it gets. It's possible. Anyways, yeah, Snaps is I think the reason why when you talk Ubuntu, you talk Snaps so much is because for like the last 7 years or something like that, can you explain one thing other than Snaps that they've actually done? Other than maybe switch to GNOME. They've switched to GNOME in that period. But all they've done with GNOME, and everybody's noticed this, all they've done with GNOME is basically spent all of their time making it look like Unity. Now, there was someone in the comments in the chat that says Ubuntu's perfect, why would you want to change it? Okay. I get this a lot, where I like to see things progress a little bit. I don't want them to look the same for 30 years. Because it makes it look like it's old and crusty. Now, I don't think that, a lot of people, Tyler, let me ask you this question. Do you like the layout? Just objectively, as much as you can. Do you like the layout of Ubuntu the way it is, with the icons on the side, the bar at the top?
I like the layout. It is implemented poorly.
Just expound upon
the top bar is like not actually all that useful. It really should be more useful, and the sidebar by default is not that pretty. It could look much better, and the way they do like the icon background and stuff around the actual icon image could be much improved. But yeah.
See, the thing is, we're all special little snowflakes, and we all like the things that we like. And
absolutely,
that's fine. I understand it. And I'm not saying that they need to do like a total overhaul of the UI. Like, I understand. Ubuntu has the way that it does things. It doesn't appeal to me. And I think that's one of the reasons why I judge it so harshly, is because it doesn't just suit the way that I want to do things. And it just, and that's all personal for me. Like, that's just the way that I don't care. There's a reason why I don't care for it. But I think objectively, if you looked and just compared Ubuntu from today from Ubuntu from 10 years ago, there's not a lot of difference. Yes, GNOME these days that they're using looks more modern. They've done some designing in the Yaru theme, because they're still using Ambiance or whatever it was 10 years ago. They've toned down the eggplant just a little bit, which is good. Which is good. And they've made their folders look better. They've polished it, which is good. But I don't know, maybe I'm just looking for a little more. I think if they were more innovative in other spaces, I wouldn't care so much about the UI. If they had other things that were interesting about it that make, like, it used to be when a new Ubuntu release came out, like, oh my God, there's a new Ubuntu release. We're all excited. What are the new features? What's going to be in there? What have they been working on for the last 6 months? Nowadays, there's an Ubuntu release. Nobody cares. Have they fixed that security bug, that XE security bug? If they have, good. Then it's going to be fine. Everybody knows that's what Ubuntu is going to be. If when they release it, it's going to be fine. It's going to be very stable. It's going to be well supported in terms of longevity. Like, you can still use 1404 or something like that if you want to pay for it and still get support for it. That's 10 years ago. So if you want to use, if you are very interested in using your computer in that way, like you want to use the thing for a very long time and you just install every update that comes out, and that's fine. That's the way that it works, and that's fine. That's a perfectly legitimate way of using your computer. We're not judging you. Well, we're judging Canonical a little bit, but not judging you. It's just, for me personally, that's not the way that I really care for it. Now, but really, we've diverted from the question just a little bit. Tyler, if I were to ask you this question, what is the best distro for a brand new to Linux user? Like someone who's never used Linux before, they've gotten past the hurdles of installing Linux, creating all that stuff, but they have yet to choose a distro. What do you think that they should actually use?
Fedora.
That surprised me a little bit. Fedora. Okay, explain
why.
It's
just because that's what my grandparents run on their computers. If my grandmother can use Fedora, no problem, and go out and use the store and get her own like extra applications, not need a thing for me, I'm pretty sure I can reasonably give it out to any new to Linux user and then be okay. They may not like it, like, UI wise, like interface wise, but I doubt they're actually going to have a problem using it, especially too, since all the apps you're going to want are there by default, not like elementary OS where you got to go bounce around to 3 different websites, enable it, then close it, open it again, and bam, there's all the applications.
Okay, see, for me, I couldn't recommend Fedora because of the NVIDIA problem, right? Because if you have an NVIDIA card in your laptop or in your desktop computer, you're not going to be able to use it out of the box, at least not that easily, right? Because you're probably going to want the dedicated drivers. Now, it does allow you to use the open source drivers out of the box, so it would be usable, but I don't know. Same thing with codecs, like you have to install codecs. Like I love OpenSUSE, but I wouldn't give it to a brand new Linux user because there are certain things you have to do upon initial boot in order to get like music to play, like YouTube to actual work. You have to install the codecs to get a lot of that stuff.
I haven't had that problem.
All right, so if you want to watch it in 4K or in certain H.265 codecs, you have to install the codecs on OpenSUSE. If you want certain emojis to appear in Discord, you have to install the codecs. It's perfectly functional without them, but in certain places, like if you don't use like MPV will play anything without the codecs because it has them all built in. But if you want to play them in a lot of other music players or whatever, you have to install them. But I think for me, and this is going to be fucking hilarious given the fact that everybody knows my opinion on this distro, for me it's Linux Mint. Like Linux Mint is the default distro, I think, these days. And the reason why I think so is because, first of all, it looks like Windows. I know a lot of people are like, I don't need it to look like Windows, but it looks like Windows, so people don't have to worry too much about transitioning to something that is radically different in terms of look and feel. Also, it has everything going for it that Ubuntu has because it is based on Ubuntu, so you get all of the software that you'd get on Ubuntu if you want to. Now, it does cut out snaps, but the vast majority of people don't care how their software is delivered as long as it is delivered. So they have that going for them. So we just complained about snaps for like 20 minutes. It doesn't have snaps. And also, it has a fairly reasonable update cycle. And it follows the Ubuntu release cycle, at least somewhat. It's a little bit delayed and stuff, but it's still there. And they're constantly creating new things. Like, we bitched and complained that they're creating like an IPTV application because like, it's taking focus away from Linux Mint. You shouldn't do that. But it's still something new and kind of cool. They create every release, even the point releases, half the time they come up with a new application, or they've redone their sticky note application, or something is new. And that's cool. Like, Cinnamon has looked the same since Cinnamon was Cinnamon. Like, it's looked the same. So it's not about changing the UI. It's about creating something. It's about creating some interest. And I'm always interested. Every time a Linux Mint comes out, I'm always interested. What'd you guys do this time? What crazy idea did you have? It makes it interesting for me, and I think that it makes it interesting for new users, and I think that's awesome. Now, I have all sorts of other problems with Linux Mint. Don't get me wrong. I'm well documented on my interest in Linux Mint. But I think for new users, ease of use, access to a lot of software, you can do that with Linux Mint a lot easier than you can with Ubuntu. Or at least that's the way that it feels for me. So I think Linux Mint is the default distro these days. And honestly, I don't think there's a bigger, what's the word? There's not a bigger like knock on Ubuntu than the fact that I just said that. Because for years, like if anybody, like literally for years, like from like 2008 to 2018, if anybody asked you what the default Linux distro was, you would have answered Ubuntu. I would have answered Ubuntu. Everyone in the chat would have answered Ubuntu. Unless you're freaking crazy.
Well, there would have been one dude who said Gentoo, and then 80 people would have like beat him up and deleted the comment.
Yeah. So the vast majority of sane people would have answered Ubuntu, but that the only people it feels like today who answer the question in that way are the people who use Ubuntu right now. And there are those people. There's still people out there that, like, if you listen to like Late Night Linux and the Late Night Linux family of podcasts, like all those guys are Ubuntu users. All of them are Ubuntu users, and they would answer the question, "What's the default Linux distro?" as Ubuntu. I don't think that that's actually true. I think that it's very much not the case anymore. But if you look at the numbers, if you like, there's still a lot of people who still use Ubuntu. But I don't feel like if you use it, like if you were to answer the question objectively, you could still say that it was Ubuntu, and that it makes you a little contemplative about how not only how we got here, which I think is lack of just true, honest to God, lack of innovation, but also it's not just innovation. It's more, you can tell when someone doesn't care about their project. You know what I mean? It just, and that lack of caring transfers over to your community. And like if someone has a lot of enthusiasm,
very true.
Like if you think if like you can tell the Linux Mint guys are very into Linux Mint. Like they're always they have controversies every once in a while, and you know they're making blog posts and like that. But do you ever actually, even the GNOME guys, you hear from the GNOME guys, the KDE guys, you can tell the KDE guys are very passionate about KDE. They have blog posts, they have their developers out in the community making videos and posts on Mastodon. The GNOME guys, you hear from the GNOME guys because if you say a word against GNOME, they come out of the fucking woodwork and like, oh, GNOME is fine. So you hear from them, but have you ever heard a fucking word from the Ubuntu guys ever since Martin Wimpress left? Like, no, you haven't. Like, I'm sure they're out there, but they're very, very quiet about it. And it feels like not only do they not care enough to be out there and about promoting their it's not about marketing. It's just like being present. And if they don't care about it, it's really hard for the community to also continue to care about it. So I don't know. It's just the way that I look at it. It's very hard to care when the developers don't also seem to, care. And they're getting their lack of, interest. I think that filters down straight from the top from the executives, because they don't obviously care about Ubuntu in terms of the desktop as well. So it's kind of like it's just flooding down, lack of interest.
Well, I don't know, man. I think one day Canonical will take a much bigger interest in the desktop market for some reason. But for right now, I think what they originally made incredible and very usable and perfect for the new to Linux person, there's other distros filling that niche much better now. Oddly enough, almost every single one derivatives of Ubuntu, but whatever. So yeah, maybe one day Ubuntu will back to being the default distro. But I think we can all say the default distro is the one where the distro you hear from the really new to Linux people the most often is the default Linux distro. That's the one everybody's running. And I don't think it's Ubuntu.
I should put a poll up on the community page for people who have just started switching to Linux and see what they're using. I should do that and see how that goes. Kermit, I'm going to take you aside here for just a minute. Kermit 2K. You cannot allow DistroWatch to determine what the most popular Linux distro is.
Actually, no. I'll disagree. It is always 1,000 times accurate. It's literally never wrong. It's perfect.
It's definitely the default Linux is definitely not MX Linux. Now, don't get me wrong, I like MX Linux. It's fantastic. It's got a lot of really cool tools. It's not the default distro. It's not the most popular Linux distro. It's just not. So, all right. So, any other thoughts here on Ubuntu that you want to share, Tyler?
No, I mean, I like it on server.
It's a good server distro, but I'd still use Debian. Surprisingly, I chose OpenSUSE for my home server. So, and yeah, I'm continually happy that I did that. Although I don't know how long we'll see. How to ditch?
I swear, once we get working on your home lab, I'll have you running Proxmox 100%. I'll convince you. It won't take long.
So someone in the chat said that Proxmox is great on top of Debian. Does that mean you can run Proxmox on top of a distro?
You could install a virtual machine on another distro and run Proxmox inside of it, yes. But Proxmox comes as an ISO.
That's what I thought. I don't think that I'm going to be able to do that because my RAID array is already set up, and I really don't want to transfer it to a different distro. Yeah, so I definitely would want to back up all of my shit, okay, before we tried. Yeah. That's for sure. I don't know. Maybe that'd take a couple of days to even think about it, because I've started putting stuff on the RAID array now and haven't backed it up properly yet. Anyways, that's it for the main conversation. I think we had a good one there. We did actually just talk about that for a good 40 minutes, which is good. So if you guys have thoughts on the whole Ubuntu default distro thing, leave them in the comment section below, or tweet at us or toot at us on Mastodon. Let us know what you have thoughts. You can also email us if you want to email us. If you want to do the whole email thing, that's email@thelinuxcast.org. All that stuff. We'll do a little bit more contact information at the end. But before we get to the end, we do have one more section, and that is the best section of the entire week. If you don't count the name is Nuggies of the Week. And the Nuggies of the Week are these things that are delicious and come with fantastic sauces. And you can't just have one. You have to have more than one. It's just impossible to have just one. So the Nuggies of the Week, we talk about tips or tricks, or most usually we bring software to the podcast and we talk about the software that we're using or whatever. So Tyler, your Nuggie of the Week.
Mine is Homar, what I use as my dashboard, which I guess I can go ahead and switch over and... Oh my God, I keep doing that. I forget to switch over to the other workspace, but I'm showing on the screen Homar. It's got my downloads for everything. This is where I can easily switch over and get to all of my different things on my home lab. It lets me keep notes. I can put common links on here. It's really just a really nice, new homepage or something for your browser that you can make up, where you can control your whole home lab setup, easily bounce between your Docker, containers, just manage everything. I like it. It looks very nice. I also have the, weather, date and time. It's just a really nice homepage, but I call it my control center.
I'm very highly jealous again of that, and I want to use it soon. All right, so my Nuggie of the Week. So I bitched and complained about email clients in a video this past week, and I continue to stand by the fact that there are no good email clients on Linux. There's just really no fantastic ones, and that bugs me. Everyone that is out there that is okay has flaws in it, and some of the flaws I just can't deal with. But Thunderbird seems to be the default, and it's the one that I keep coming back to. And I know that everyone's like, oh, just use webmail. Okay. Everyone who told me in the comment section of the video to just use webmail, no, I can't use webmail because I have multiple accounts, guys. I don't want to have, I know I'm a tab holder, but it's within reason, I don't want to actually have multiple tabs open for every email that I have. I have one for work. I have one that's a personal one. I have one for the channel. I have a couple other ones that I don't check as often, but I still want to be able to have access to without having to open up a tab. So I can't use webmail. So I want to use a client. and Thunderbird seems to be the one that I'm coming back to. So this is more of a tip than a software thing. If you're using Thunderbird, if you go to View, Folders, and then Unified, you can have a unified inbox of all your accounts. It is not on by default, so you have to turn it. You have to go to that section of the View menu and turn it on. But if you have multiple accounts and you want them all in the same inbox, like I do, go turn that on. It's amazing. So, yeah, that's my Nuggie of the week is Thunderbird unified inbox. So it'd be awesome. It is pretty awesome. Anyways, that is it for the Linux Cast. It's an awesome podcast. If you could be so kind as to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, we'd be really appreciative. You don't actually have to listen to us on Apple Podcasts to go leave a review. You do have to have an Apple account to do so, unfortunately. But if you have an Apple account, even if you don't listen to us on Apple Podcasts, head on over there, leave us a review, leave us a rating. That'd be really appreciative. Really appreciative. That's not the proper grammar, but we'd really appreciate it. Anyways, do that. If you want to get in contact with us, you can do so in any number of ways. The best way is to head on over to the website, which is thelinuxcast.org, and you'll find all of our previous episodes there all the way back to season 1. You can also find several blog posts that I've made over the course of the year, and it's just the year more than just the years. And it's just an amazing place to find all this stuff. So linuxcast.org, where you find that. Tyler does have a YouTube channel. He doesn't know how to use it. I do
actually upload, but obviously not regularly.
He did have a video this week. I didn't watch it, but he had a video this week. So he did find the password long enough to upload the video, and then immediately probably lost the password again.
Yep. It automatically changes every 2 days, and so then I have to go on a hunt to find the password. So probably 6 months from now, you'll get another video. Look forward to it. Subscribe.
Yeah. Anyways, you can find all of his previous videos and his occasional uploads at youtube.com/ZanyOG. You can email us at email@thelinuxcast.org. We do get all of the emails that you send, so I read all of them. I have been very good lately at replying to them. If you are emailing me to get to Tyler or to one of the previous hosts, you can do that as well. I'll forward that stuff on to them as I usually do. So email at thelinuxcast.org is the proper email address to get to us if you actually need to and you're not a member of any of the social media stuff. If you want to find all of our contact information, you can do so at thelinuxcast.org/contact. All of our stuff is there, including the Discord links, Patreon links, all sorts of stuff like Mastodon and all sorts of places. So check that out as well. Thanks to everybody. You can. I can't do anything anymore. Every week, get to the contact information. Matt can't talk worth a shit. That's just the way that it goes. Anyways, you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/linuxcast. Thanks to everybody who does support me on Patreon at patreon.com/linuxcast. Did I mention patreon.com/linuxcast? I think I did. Anyways, thanks to everybody who does that. We really do appreciate it. On YouTube and Ko-fi as well. We're there if you want to support us. Thank you so very much for your support. We record this live every Saturday, and I mean every Saturday, at least for the last two Saturdays. We record this live every Saturday at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, and you can watch us live. We have a lot of fun. You can get into the chat and participate in a lot of interesting conversations, including shock and awe that one of us is using a Mac. That literally took up many minutes of conversation in the chat today. Oh my God, Tyler's using a Mac. You just picture Gordon Ramsay there with 2 pieces of bread. What are you? I'm an idiot sandwich. I don't know. Anyways, that's it for this week. We'll see ya next time.
Boy.